Let us turn to Diamond Sutra on page 23. And last time we finished with section 21, except for the last 3 paragraphs. We almost cover 50 or 60% of the sutra. There's altogether 32 sections. If we finish this section, there's only 10 more sections to go, 11 more sections to go. So far, what have we got from this sutra? What have we learned from this sutra? I guess I always have been repeating. We always have to remember what is the initial question asked by Subhuti. That's very important. What's the original question? And then we also have to learn how to detach from or not attached to the 4 fallacious conceptual dimensions. Actually, there's not just 4, there's 6. So, no attachment to ego, personality, beings, and life. In the Chinese language is 无我相、人相、众生相、受解相，无法相 and also no attachment to the Dharma, 无非法相 and also no attachment to no Dharma. There's no attachment. We reincarnate because we have attachments. Attachment to what? To worry, of course, to jealousy, hatred, greediness, anxiety, depression, all kinds of mental afflictions were attached to them, especially worry and fear. These are the 2 very commonly attachments of temporal beings, of secular beings, ordinary sense living beings like us. Worry, anxiety. What is this worry? Worry about what? Well, a common worry that most people have, or almost everybody has. Sickness. Worry about sickness. That's very common. Well, because in North America we already have food, we have shelter. Well, in underdeveloped countries you worry about whether you've got food and shelter. But in North America, most of these things are taken care of. And when you don't have this kind of worries, you worry about things you look for worry. The next worry will be death. You worry about sickness. You're not sick, but you worry about sickness. And if you are sick, you worry about not worrying. The worry would jump to a higher level, becomes feared. Worry develops into feared. Fear of what? Fear of this thing called death. So we're attached to worry, we're attached to death. That's very common worry. But if we are learning Diamond Sutra, we should be detached from all this. What does this worry comes from? It comes from ego, it comes from personality, it comes from life, it comes from beings. All this worry comes from that. And many people would say, oh, yeah, we were worrying, but sometimes these worries are real. I worry about sickness, I worry about death, I worry about sickness. I got the sickness. And that worry is justified. It does not matter whether you got sick or not. I know a lot of people. I know right now there's at least one devotee coming from Hong Kong, and he was near death. I can tell you his story. He's now 76 years old. At the age of 40, he had a car accident. He broke his neck and he broke his spinal cord. So if you break your neck and the upper part of your body, and you break your spine, what's left? So he was paralyzed, and at that time he had a family of 3, his wife, his 2 children, and child, 6. One child is 6, the other is 8. They're coming for this. The whole family came from Hong Kong to join us in our retreat. And he had that accident one morning, and that's before the Cultural Revolution. And the whole car rolled downhill into a cliff. And the driver got thrown out, and he grabbed onto a big tree. He got bruises all over the body, but not life-threatening. But he hit a rock, so broke his neck. The neck's broken, and spine broken. He was rushed to a hospital. And because he got his accident on duty, then he was rushed to the best hospital in Guangzhou, in the, I think it's Army and Navy hospital, the best hospital for for brain, for surgery. And so he was taken to the hospital, and a few doctors diagnosed and came in for the emergency, and after long period of discussions and diagnosis, and they know his neck was broken and his spine broken, he couldn't move. So they started the operation because he got his accident on duty, on the government's duty. If he didn't get his accident because of duty, he would have been dead, because nobody would have money for such a surgery. At that time, very few people had money for surgery at that time in China. So the doctors came to, I should be talking about Diamond Sutra though. Just continue. So the doctors make a decision that a surgery had to be performed, and to connect, to use steel wires, I don't know what did they use, to connect the broken nerves of the neck back and connect the spinal cord back. But somehow they could not use anesthesia, pain relieving, and they had to cut him alive. So he couldn't move, but he was still able to listen, and the wife listened. And do you want to perform talk to the wife and himself, do you want to perform the surgery? Somehow, I don't know why, he can explain it. I couldn't use anesthesia. Is that anesthesia, right? And he had to be cut with all the feelings around, alive. I don't know why they didn't use acupuncture at that time. It's many years ago, 35 years ago. And he said, go ahead, because what's left in me? If the surgery couldn't be done, I would be dead. So that's the only chance. So he grabbed at the chance and say, just work on me. So they turn him upside down, of course, and then cut, and then they connect. And then they passed out after the surgery. And he was in a coma. He was in a coma for how long? 2 years. It was in a coma, and the nurse turned him around and of course feed him with food could still be eating. And after 2 years, he recovered. Isn't that a miracle? After 2 years, he recovered, and the surgery itself was successful. Somehow he was in a coma. But he recovered, and later he recovered and walked out of the hospital. At that time, he was 40 years old, 40-something, 42. And he's now 76. And recently, at the age of 72, he registered himself for a degree in Chinese medicine. At the age of 76, he went to university. And he graduated just last year, 75. He said, do you want to attend my graduation? I said, I couldn't, I was in Canada. And then he got his degree, and now he wants to enroll for a second degree. This time not for medicine, for Buddhism. He sent his registration in. So when he graduated, it would have been 78. He's coming for the retreat. The reason why I could say something of his privacy is he's always released to everybody. And recently, a few years ago, he got some of his connections broken. So sometimes he woke up at night because of the pain, and he refused to eat painkillers. And he had this pain all his life, actually. He had this pain in the neck, but all his life, but he was able to raise the whole family. And his family prospered. His sons went to UBC and graduated from there. 2 sons graduated from there, and they did excellent jobs right now. And he was always telling people, miracles do happen. Miracles do happen. Imagine. And I remember what Albert Einstein said. There are 2 ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as if everything is. Everything is a miracle. Particularly when you know Buddhism, you can always invoke Bodhisattvas to help you. At that time, he didn't know anything about Bodhisattvas. He just built his faith, his confidence, his will to live. He always tells people, I had this strong will to live. I never give up. Anybody, most people, would have given up already. I knew him 30 years ago when I was in business, before I became a monk. And this guy, he worked extremely hard. He behaved as if he's a normal man. He went about everywhere traveling to South America for trading. He traveled to every part of China as if it's not suffering. And when he took his pill, I saw him taking a pill. You know how he took his pill? He just popped in his mouth. I said, how come he didn't take any water? I train myself in all situations. So I just pop it into my mouth without any water. Sometimes I don't have any water. So he trained him. He's like an Iron Man, you know. And he's been traveling around. He had to sleep on hard bed. So when you stay in a hotel, he never stay on the soft bed. He sleeps on the floor. So if you go trading with him, traveling with him, you can take 2 beds if you're in the same room, because he's always sleeping on the floor. And a wonderful man with extremely strong will, his will to live. Because he told me when he was lying in the hospital, he only got one will. I still have my son, 6 years old, 8 years old. I got to raise them up. I still have my wife. I can't die. I don't want to die. And live on. Today, he will be coming to the retreat. And I still remember what Helen Keller said. Security is a superstition. It does not exist in the world. Life is either an adventure or nothing. What is the security? It's a superstition. What is the security? Security is not being hurt, not going to die. That's security, right? You want to be secure. What kind of security? The security of being protected, of being protection of your own life. So if you think that that protection automatically exists in you without you working at it, it's a superstition. It does not. Don't think about that way. There's no such thing as security. You've got to work it out. Life is either an adventure or nothing. What is this adventure? the adventure to live, the adventure to exist, the adventure to live in spite of all these difficulties, in spite of all these anxieties and fears and worries and hopelessness. Confidence. Every day every day counts. Every day is a treasure. You live every day, and nobody knows about the future. But on top of that, if you know Buddhism, if you're sick, you got the mantra to help you. Mantra gives miracles. I have seen quite a few people who suffer from life-threatening sickness. They got through. They're still living. They got the sickness 8 years ago, 10 years ago. And they've gone through a few operations and surgeries, but their will to live overcome everything. They still survive. Of course, they survive with suffering. They still feel painful. They still have to go through surgeries. They still have to go through a lot of inconvenience because of the sickness. They sail in that boat. And that boat sometimes in the stormy weathers, back and forth, north and south, but they still manage to hold onto the steer, and the sail still stands up in the storm, in the winter, in rainy weather, in those snowstorms. But they still sail through. Some of those who give up already submerged. Which attitude you want to take is up to you. Which attitude? And that applies not only to sickness, that applies to everything in life. Do you want to sail through? Do you have the confidence to get it? If I didn't have the confidence, if I didn't have the strong will, I wouldn't have built this temple. I started this temple 30 years ago. I went through a lot of difficulties. I managed to survive. Sometimes when I look back, it's a wonder to me. How could I have done something like that? Of course, I got a lot of help from a lot of people. Lots of help. Without those help, I wouldn't have what is this temple today. This temple is not mine. This temple is a manifestation of cooperation, coordination, strong will. Very, very strong will. And sometimes I imagine not just those who involve have strong will and help in. There's all others, guardian angels, existing sentient beings that are those that are invisible. They all contribute their help. Because they know that if the organizers have the strong will with no profit motive, no greediness involved, they will be sailing through. In the process of the 30 years, a lot of people, we met a lot of criticism. We met a lot of obstacles. We heard people saying, oh, these guys are making a profit, building a temple, getting all this. This is called a religious business. You get a lot of money from the business of religion. So these guys are successful. They're building a religious business. They're making money. But look, they're making a lot of money. You know, where did they spend the money? And are they justifying what they're doing? We met a lot of criticisms like that. And sometimes when I think back, invisible guardian angels, would they help people who only have profit motive? You think they are as stupid as us? They see through our minds. So what am I talking about now? I haven't gotten into the Diamond Sutra. But anyway, talking about detachment, not attaching to it, you need strong will. But I have seen many people who are being confronted by difficulties, obstacles, sickness, calamities, atrocious childhood. They all survive. And of course, there are many, many who got swallowed up by the sea, who got buried in the desert of the long journey. Right now I'm reading a book. It's written by a very good writer. It's called 10,000 Miles Without a Cloud. I think you should read that book. It's by Sun Suyun. Sun is S-U-N. Get that in the library. S-U-N, that's the last name. Sun Shu is S-H-U and Y-U-N, I think. She also wrote a book called A Year in Tibet. And this 10,000 Miles Without a Cloud is a journal of her journey, walking the journey as walked by Xuanzang. You know Xuanzang? The monk who traveled from China to India for two years, finally got to India, stayed in India and studied for 17 years and brought sutras back to China. And many monks attempted the Silk Road to go to India. How many became successful? Very few. Out of thousands of them, most of them were buried in the desert. They sacrificed their lives. You see, all the Buddhisms that we've got, all the literature, they came from easy sources. They came from sacrifices of life by these monks going over there. Their lives are valuable to them, but they were willing to sacrifice them in spite of all these difficulties, and some really got sacrificed. A lot of skeletons and bones on the deserts. You know how Xuanzang walked his way? By recognition of human bones in the desert. And in that book, there's a lot of information about how Xuanzang traveled and how she traveled. I don't get any commission out of the book, but it's a very thick book, a very good writer. A Chinese writer. She became a renowned writer and a filmmaker because she make a documentary films on these things. It's a good book. I should gear myself back to Diamond Sutra. Okay, let's read. Then the wise Subhuti said to the Buddha, "World Honored One, will there be in future ages living beings who will believe this Dharma when they hear it?" The Buddha said, "Subhuti, the living beings you just mentioned are neither living beings nor are they not living beings." Why, Subhuti? The Tathagata said these living beings are not really living beings, but are expediently called living beings. These sentences seem to be paradoxical. How come living beings are not living beings, nor are they not living beings? That's why they are called living beings. For people who study the sutra, they don't know what it means. What's the meaning of living beings are neither living beings nor are they not living beings? Generally, living beings, like you and me, we're also living beings. Living beings, from the perspective of enlightenment, can be classified as in two categories. Living beings who are temporal living beings, like us who are living in this world, temporal, transient, ordinary living beings, and also living beings who are bodhisattvas, who have achieved a very high level of enlightenment, who are already free from reincarnations, who are in the 10 realms, They are enlightened human, living sentient beings. So, and they are not sentient, they are also beings who listen to the Buddha. They are not living beings, they are enlightened living beings. That's why they are not living beings, because they are different from us. They are enlightened. And these living beings can also see the Sambhoga Gaya of the Buddha. We cannot see the Sambhoga Gaya. You know what the Sambhoga Gaya is? Sambhoga Gaya is the reward body. The Buddha has 3 bodies, right? What's the first body? Dhammakaya. What is the Dhammakaya? The Dhammakaya is the Dhamma body. It's not a physical body that you can see. It is formless, it penetrating all existence, shining everywhere and enlightening all. We cannot see it. It's like space. We can only see things in space, the forms in space, the sound in space. We cannot actually see space. We know space. It's everywhere. The Buddha's body is everywhere. It's the Dhamma body. It radiates all. There's nowhere that doesn't have the Dhamma body. That's the Dhammakaya. The second is Sambhogakaya. The reward body of the Buddha, only the enlightened sentient beings can see. So if Subhuti asks, well, would living beings in the future listen to the Buddha and see the Buddha and believe in the Buddha's teaching? And the Buddha said, living beings does not include the living beings like us. Living beings also include the enlightened living beings. They can surely listen to the Buddha. They can see the Buddha's reward body, the Sambhogakaya. So, sentient beings are not sentient beings because they are already free from reincarnation. Not like us. They could listen to the Buddha's Sambhogakaya. However, nor are they not living beings. That means they are also sentient beings. They are also living beings. Why? They haven't achieved Buddhahood yet. Any beings not having achieved Buddhahood, they are still sentient beings from the perspective of enlightenment. So don't include just yourself. We, living beings, can only see the Nirmanakaya of the Buddha. We can only see the 32 meritorious attributes of the Buddha. We see the actual body of the Buddha 2,600 years ago. We see the Buddha's representation now as an image. Sentient beings still can see the Nirmanakaya of the Buddha. We sentient beings also see the Nirmanakaya of Bodhisattvas. Because Bodhisattvas appear in this world sometimes. Avalokitesvara, even some guardian angels. Some people, occasionally, if their mind is in purity, they could see existence that not ordinary people can see. So, give you another example that you can remember. In a pond of pure water, if the water is crystal clear, so pure that there's not a trace of pollutant in it, in a pond of pure water, if there is no sunlight, you cannot see any image reflection. There's no sunlight, there's darkness, right? Absolutely no sunlight, how can you see anything? Pure water here means the water is so pure without any pollutants that there's no obstruction to it. Assuming the sunlight comes out, you can see image of the reflection. That image is the physical body, the Nirmanakaya, the image on the pure water. You can see, we can see images, reflections on the pure water, and that is not the reality. That is not the Dhammakaya. That's just the Nirmanakaya, the physical body reflection that we can see. And the sunlight is the Sambhogakaya. The sunlight gives you the ability to see it. But that sunlight is a very high level. And the pure water is, of course, the Dhammakaya. The pure water is no obstructions. A crystal with no obstructions, you don't even know the crystal exists. Now, when you see the image, the physical body, the Nirmanakaya, or even the sunlight, the Sambhogakaya, when you see them and you know it's unreal, you don't attach to them. So the Buddha says, if all forms are seen as unreal, you see the Buddha. You see the Tathagata. So it says, if all forms are seen as unreal, the Tathagata will be perceived. Then you actually see, but all of us, we only see the images and the reflections in the sunlight. We don't see the purity of the water. Okay, so that's what it means. Next, why Subuddhi? The Tathagata says these living beings are not beings, but they are expediently called living beings. These beings, us, we came out of causality. Our body that we see now, our physical body, is transient. We came out because of all these causes put together. How can we attach to this physical body? Form is no other than emptiness, and emptiness is no other than form. When you perceive your own body, the five skandhas, as empty, then you're free from suffering. If you're sick, you perceive this body as yours, you're suffering. But if you're sick, you perceive this body as coming from causality, and it's going to disintegrate someday. We don't know when. Future will tell me. But how come I'm attaching it to now? Because I'm not enlightened. I attach to it. I worry about this body. When this body becomes sick, I worry about it. I attach to it. But if I perceive that the five skandhas are empty, where is sickness? Where is body? Where are the five skandhas? It's emptiness. So that you're always chanting Kate Kate Bharakate, Bharasamkate Buddheswaha, there's no body to be obtained. There's no sickness to be worried about. There's no death. Because a Bodhisattva, when they remove all this attachment, their minds have no obstacles. There's no obstacles in mind. When there's no obstacles in mind, there's no fear, no worry, no anxiety, no depression, no suffering. Even the idea of no suffering is not to be obtained, because there's nothing to be obtained. I finished section 21 in time. It's easy to talk about it than to directly believe and experience it. Everybody knows about voidness, about emptiness, but when you're sick, you worry about it because you haven't seen it through. If that's the case, invoke help from Bodhisattva. You should have an invoking mantra that you'll get used to. Every time when your worry comes, invoke that mantra. At the same time, purify your karma. Why do you get sick? Because of karma. In this life, probably not in this life, maybe the previous life. Because in your previous life, you could have committed a lot of killing. You change that, not killing anymore. On top of that, you encourage people not to kill. Make it a mandate for you. If every day I have convinced a person not to kill, I have made one merit, and I have marked one stroke in there. Next day, another stroke. As time goes on, when I look back in my journal, I have convinced 500 people not to kill. That's a lot of merits. So in this life, you purify your karma, and at the same time, you're invoking help from the Bodhisattva, and at the same time, you strengthen your willpower. Miracle comes out. But that miracle would come out only through extreme devotion and extreme earnesty. Do you have that? Many people have. I won't say a few people have. Especially when it comes to life. And the man who is coming over, that devotee, can tell you a lot about it. His strong will, his willpower. He's an example of his family. All his family members become devout Buddhists. Every year when I went to China, his family members worked with me in the fish market. 3 o'clock in the morning, struggling to get good prices to get all this fish released. Last year we released 1 million lives. Last year we were able to get it together close to 1 million Hong Kong dollars. A lot of these are free. The traffic, the boats rental, all these. I started out in 2003 with myself only releasing sea lives in China. And the amount of money, the most is $180,000. That's the most, sometimes $60,000. And now I was able to get it together close to $1 million. And I have more than 50 people coming with me for the release of sea lives and land lives. That's not because of me. Because of that, it's not me that is working. It's not because of my strong willpower. It's because of this no strong willpower. There's nothing to be obtained. This willpower is not to be a status accrued to you. You need the willpower, but again, what is this willpower? It's emptiness. There's nothing to be obtained.